The cafeteria was a noisy sea of voices and laughter, trays clattering, sneakers squeaking across the floor, and the steady hum of hundreds of students crammed into one space trying to forget about class for 30 precious minutes. The smell of fries and pizza hung thick in the air, and somewhere in the corner, a vending machine hummed lazily. But amidst all that chaos, there was one table that stood out, not because of noise, but because of its silence. At that table sat Lila. It was her first day at Westbrook High. The kind of day she had rehearsed a dozen times in her head, imagining smiles, maybe a friendly classmate offering to show her around, maybe a quiet lunch with someone new. But reality was colder. She sat alone, her tray of soup and bread untouched, her fingers nervously tracing circles on the plastic table. Every few seconds, she looked around, pretending not to notice that most people were already noticing her, whispering, glancing, and smirking in that cruel, careless way high school kids do when they see someone who doesn't quite fit in. Lila wasn't dressed like them. Her clothes were simple, a soft cream sweater, neatly ironed jeans, her hair tied in a braid that rested over one shoulder. No flashy makeup, no glittering phone case, no loud laughter. Just quiet, shy eyes that took everything in but gave nothing away. Across the cafeteria, a table of boys was laughing too loudly. The center of attention, as always, was Jake Parker, tall, broad-shouldered, with a cocky grin that had gotten him out of more trouble than it should have. He was the kind of boy teachers secretly dreaded and students secretly admired. He always had something to say, and it was usually cruelly funny. His friends worshipped him. "Hey, check out the new girl," one of his buddies said, nodding toward Lila. Jake turned, squinting across the room. His grin widened. "Sitting all alone, huh? That's sad." Another boy laughed. "She looks scared to death." Jake leaned back in his chair, spinning a fry between his fingers. "Let's fix that." The table erupted in laughter as Jake stood up, slinging his backpack over one shoulder like a badge of authority. He strutted through the rows of tables, moving like he owned the place, which, in a way, he did. People moved out of his way without thinking. Some smiled, some rolled their eyes, and others just waited to see what he'd do this time. Jake loved that attention. He fed on it. Lila noticed him coming only when his shadow fell across her tray. She looked up, startled. For a moment, she thought he might be asking for a seat, that maybe, for once, someone wanted to be friendly. "Hey, new girl," Jake said, leaning on the table with one hand. "You too good to talk to anyone." Lila blinked. "No, I just..." He cut her off with a smirk. "You're what, shy? Weird? Or just think you're better than us?" His friends at the other table snickered. Lila looked down again, her fingers tightening around her spoon. "I don't think I'm better. I just wanted to eat quietly." "Eat quietly," Jake mimicked in a high, mocking tone. "That's cute. You hear that, guys? She wants to eat quietly." The boys laughed louder, and a few nearby students joined in just to feel part of something. Lila's cheeks burned. She tried to stay calm, tried to remind herself that it didn't matter, that he'd get bored and walk away. But Jake wasn't the type to walk away. "Maybe you're quiet 'cause you think you're too good for this cafeteria food," he said, stepping closer. "Maybe what you need is a little, welcome to Westbrook." Before Lila could react, Jake's hand shot out and slapped the tray from her hands. The soup splattered across the floor, a messy orange puddle spreading beneath the table. The metal tray clanged loudly. The sound slicing through the noise like thunder. The laughter stopped. The entire cafeteria froze. Lila gasped softly, staring at the dripping edge of the table, her lunch scattered across the tiles. For a long, breathless moment, no one spoke. She didn't cry, though her throat burned and her eyes stung. She simply looked up at Jake, and for the first time, their eyes met, her gaze steady, calm, almost painfully disappointed. That look caught him off guard. He had expected fear, anger, maybe even tears. But not that calm, piercing disappointment. It made something twist in his chest, though he didn't understand why. He quickly masked it with another smirk, forcing a laugh. "What, you gonna cry now?" he said, looking around for approval from his audience. The laughter resumed, though it was weaker this time, uncertain. Some students looked away. A few even whispered, "That's too much." Jake shrugged and turned, ready to leave with his usual sense of triumph. But that was when he noticed movement at the edge of the cafeteria, a chair scraping, slow and deliberate. From the corner table, a tall figure stood up. It was Ethan. He'd been sitting alone, earphones in, watching quietly, until now. His face was unreadable, his movements calm, but there was something dangerous about the way he walked. His presence seemed to pull the noise out of the room, like gravity shifting. Jake frowned. "What's your problem, man?" Ethan didn't answer. He just kept walking. Lila's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. She stood too, voice trembling. "Ethan, don't." Jake blinked. "Ethan, wait, that's your brother." Lila's silence was answer enough. A murmur rippled through the cafeteria. Some kids grinned, others whispered. Jake laughed nervously. "Oh, I see. The big brother's coming to the rescue, huh? Cute." But Ethan didn't smile. He stopped right in front of Jake, close enough that Jake had to tilt his chin upward slightly to meet his eyes. And suddenly, Jake didn't feel tall anymore. There was no smirk on Ethan's face, no anger, just a look of cold, controlled fury that made Jake's stomach tighten. The cafeteria waited, breathless. The sound of a single soda can opening somewhere in the background felt too loud. Jake tried to laugh again, but it came out weaker. "Hey man, relax, I was just messing around." Ethan's voice was quiet, almost too quiet. "You hit my sister's tray." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "So what? It's just soup. Chill." Ethan took a slow step closer. The air between them crackled with tension. "Apologize." The word wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. Jake felt his throat tighten. Something in Ethan's tone made him feel like a kid again, small, exposed, and powerless. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck. Lila stood frozen, torn between fear and awe. She had never seen her brother like this. And though no one could have guessed it yet, in the next few seconds, everything in that cafeteria was about to change forever. Ethan's footsteps echoed across the cafeteria floor, slow and deliberate, each step heavier than the last. The students closest to the center of the room began to back away, dragging their chairs with screeching sounds that sliced through the tense silence. Jake stood frozen, the smirk that had once seemed carved into his face now fading fast. He'd always known how to play his audience, but now the crowd wasn't laughing. No one was. Every eye was on Ethan, and every breath felt like it might shatter the air. Lila stood near the table, her hands trembling, clutching the edge of her sweater. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run, to say something, anything that could stop what was about to happen, but Ethan's expression silenced her. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even hatred. It was something deeper, colder, the kind of quiet that came right before a storm. When Ethan finally stopped in front of Jake, the difference between them became clear. Jake was tall and broad, but Ethan's presence was something else entirely, not loud, not threatening, but steady, unyielding. The calmness in his eyes made Jake's stomach twist. "Did you just hit my sister?" Ethan's voice was low, controlled, but every word carried weight. Jake swallowed. His friends, who had been so loud moments ago, were suddenly nowhere near him. They had drifted back, pretending to be interested in their phones or food, as if stepping away would erase their part in it. "Hey, man," Jake said with a nervous chuckle, raising his hands. "It was just a joke. Don't take it so serious, alright?" Ethan didn't move. His gaze didn't even flicker. "You hit her tray. You made her cry." Jake laughed again, but it was shakier now. "Relax, dude. It's no big deal. I said it was a joke." Ethan's jaw tightened. A joke. He took a step forward, and Jake instinctively stepped back. "Do you think making someone feel small is funny?" Jake's mouth opened, but no words came out. Around them, the cafeteria was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air vents. Lila whispered, "Ethan, please don't." Her brother didn't look at her. His voice dropped even lower. "Apologize to her." Jake's eyes darted around the room, desperate to find someone, anyone, to back him up. But no one moved. Even the teachers who might have normally intervened were standing near the doors, watching cautiously, unsure what to do. "Look, I said I'm sorry, okay?" Jake muttered under his breath, trying to sound casual. Ethan's expression didn't change. "Say it to her." Jake hesitated. His pride screamed at him not to. Apologizing in front of everyone would kill whatever reputation he had left. But Ethan's stare didn't waver. It felt like being seen through completely, every insecurity, every shallow layer of arrogance stripped bare. Jake forced out a laugh, trying to recover his tone. "Man, you don't scare me." The moment those words left his mouth, Ethan moved. It wasn't a wild swing or some messy scuffle, it was precise, controlled. In a blink, Ethan grabbed Jake by the front of his shirt and pushed him down. The impact wasn't violent, but it was firm enough to knock the wind out of him. Jake hit the floor with a dull thud, his tray rattling off the table beside him. Gasps echoed across the cafeteria. Lila covered her mouth, frozen. Ethan knelt down, his hand still gripping Jake's shirt, his voice still eerily calm. "I said apologize." Jake's chest rose and fell rapidly. He tried to shove Ethan off, but the strength pressing him down wasn't just physical, it was the weight of guilt, humiliation, and the sudden understanding that this wasn't a game anymore. I'm sorry." Jake blurted out, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean it, all right. I swear." Ethan's eyes didn't soften. For a moment, he held him there, letting the words hang in the air, forcing Jake to feel the sting of them. Then, slowly, Ethan released him. Jake scrambled up, wiping his eyes, realizing with horror that he was crying. His friends were staring in stunned silence. The king of the cafeteria was on his knees, trembling, tears mixing with the remnants of spilled soup on the floor. Ethan stood up and turned to his sister. The anger was gone now, replaced by something gentler, regret, maybe, or sorrow. He reached out and helped her pick up her tray, now dented and dripping. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Lila nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "You didn't have to." "I did," he interrupted softly. "Someone had to." The cafeteria remained silent as they walked away together. Ethan's hand rested protectively on her shoulder, and the students parted instinctively, giving them space. No one dared whisper now. Jake stayed where he was, sitting on the floor. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath uneven. He wasn't crying from the pain, it wasn't even about Ethan anymore. It was about the sudden, crushing realization of who he had become. For years, he had built his confidence on fear, making others small so he could feel big. But now, for the first time, he understood how it felt to be the one on the floor, eyes burning, surrounded by silence. He looked up, seeing the expressions around him, some mocking, some pitying, most just disappointed. The crowd that once cheered for him had turned away. The laughter he thrived on was gone. In the far corner, one of his friends muttered, "Dude, just get up." But Jake didn't move. His hands trembled as he stared at the floor. "I messed up," he whispered, mostly to himself. "I really messed up." Ethan and Lila disappeared through the cafeteria doors, their figures framed in the harsh midday light. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the noise began to rise again, soft at first, uncertain, as if the entire school was learning how to speak after holding its breath too long. Someone started cleaning the spilled soup. A few kids went back to eating, though their voices were quieter than before. The laughter that followed was careful, muted, like the room itself had been humbled. Jake finally stood, brushing off his shirt, his face still wet. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word. He walked past the tables, past the people who once called him their leader, and all the way out of the cafeteria. That day, something shifted at Westbrook High. The story spread like wildfire, the day Jake Parker made the new girl cry and ended up crying himself. Some exaggerated it, others softened it, but the truth stayed the same. Lila went on with her day quietly, avoiding attention, though everyone looked at her differently now. Not with pity, with respect. Ethan didn't talk about it again, and neither did she. But the silence between them carried a quiet understanding. Some lessons are taught not by words, but by standing up when it matters most. As for Jake, he didn't return to his usual table the next day. The cafeteria buzzed with life again, but it was missing that one loud, cruel laugh that had once filled every corner. And though no one said it out loud, everyone knew, there was no king anymore. Just a boy who finally learned what it meant to be human.